Welcome back to another very special edition of Tournament Tactician. My name is Boulevard, caster, analyst, all that good stuff, and today, instead of going over the tier list because there are no upcoming sort of open grassroots tournaments this weekend, of course we're going to focus on the seasonals. Now, I was able to get champion breakdowns for the Americas, Europe, and Asia, so sorry Southeast Asia, I just don't have your information, and it doesn't give me an exact replica of the decks that players were playing, but it gives me a really good idea, right? Because there's only so many different champion combinations that are being played right now, and it's very obvious to tell based on the numbers sort of what's going into what. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this short and sweet. I'm going to throw out my predictions for each region and try to back them up a little bit, let you know where I'm coming from on this one. And I gotta say, for the most part, I think that I'll be tweeting later tonight at casterboulevard on Twitter about which players I think are going to win from each region, and my general game plan is to vote for the best Lee Sin player in every region. Now, I don't have great data on all of the players. Sometimes I am just going to have to pick the highest seeded Lee Sin player, but where I can let personal bias come in, I absolutely will. So, North America, or the Americas rather, as it does include Latin and South America. I went over this one a lot on War Room. I think that Thresh Nasus, Lissandra, and Lee Sin is the lineup. I'm sticking with that one. I think that if you are looking to pick on Thresh Nasus, maybe you even end up on like Lee Sin, Lissandra, and either Aesol Demacia or Frostbite midrange instead of that Thresh Nasus mirror that you want to go for. And I once again want to reiterate, Spirit Fire in the Thresh Nasus deck I legitimately think is a good tech. So kind of went over the Americas. Not going to go too deep into that one. I just kind of want to go show you guys the numbers as well. So here in Asia, Listrundle, this is the one region where Listrundle actually beat out Nasus, at least that I was able to get the numbers out of. But once again, I don't think it impacts things too much. Aurelion Sol Zoe was still their third deck, so it makes sense that I'm going to go for the same line of thinking that I did for the Americas. The Asian numbers actually mirror the Americas ones very clearly. You know, you've got the Nasus and the Lissandra up at the top, and then you've got Aesol in third place, and then Lee Sin down in fourth place. Now, Asia has some of the best Lee Sin players in the world. UCG Boom Timo, who won the previous seasonal, was an absolute master at playing that deck. He's not in the top 32 of this seasonal, so I'm going to have to make a new prediction on that one, but I think that the same lineups are going to stand to reason. Now, there were a couple of weirder one-offs in the Asian seasonal, so maybe you do need to bring a more safe lineup, so to speak. You know, maybe you go for the Aesol Demacia and the Lee Sin and the Lissandra instead of getting a little bit too crazy and throwing Frostbite midrange in there, because for the most part, Asia is not the biggest Frostbite midrange fan. That's more of a Southeast Asia thing. Southeast Asia's always been really big on that deck, but Asia, Japan and Korea specifically, not really going for that one. I'm actually trying to count, what is that, 4? 5 Ash? This is not a well-represented graph. I think it's actually 2, because this is 5. Yeah, so like 2 Ash. That's about what we expect to see, right? So throw the Frostbite midrange out the window when it comes to Asia is basically what I'm getting at here. And then for EU, EU actually went for Lee Sin instead of Aesol, which I don't think impacts things too much. You know, you're probably not going to see any Aurelion Sol players actually come in through the top cut, but it was still interesting that Zoe had such high representation with Aurelion Sol having such little representation, but it makes sense. I mean, if you combine the Lee Sin and Aesol numbers, you're at 18 of the Zoes accounted for, so I think it's going to be sort of just another cut and dry Nasus, Lissandra, Lee Sin style of lineup. Now, I don't think that lineup is going to win all 3 of these seasonals. I definitely could see it winning Asia. I could see it winning America, but EU, I'm not so sure. I think that they are going to have some crazy counter lineup come out. EU tends to be a little bit more of the Wild West when it comes to the decks that actually win the seasonal for whatever reason. And I think that Asia absolutely is going to have Aesol Demacia in their winning lineup. I think that it's probably going to be Lee Sin, Aesol Demacia, and Lissandra. And part of the reason for that is this is Reroll's Dragon deck. Now, for those of you that don't know who Reroll is, they won the Monuments of Power Asia Seasonal, and this deck was one of the most popular decks in Top Cut. Now, none of the Western Hemisphere was playing this deck at the time, and this was the most represented deck, or at least close to, in the Asia Seasonal Top Cut. So they've been on Aesol Demacia for a long time. They have been waiting for this one, and it is finally their meta to shine. If Worlds were happening this patch, I fully believe that Asia would be favored coming into this as both just the premier Aesol Demacia region as well as having such strong Lee Sin players. But luckily for the West of us, you see the West of us? I love that. Worlds isn't happening right now, so we are going to see what we see in terms of what each region is bringing, but I fully expect a deck like this, an Aesol Demacia deck, to be in the winning lineup of the Asia Seasonal. It might even end up being overtaking Nasus in their top cut, But as I had mentioned in War Room, players typically aren't swapping off of the decks that they topped with in the Cosmic Creation Seasonal, in the America side at least. Only about 4 players swapped off of what they had brought for the Swiss rounds, so I'm not expecting any major shakeups. Now, I didn't get a chance to look at Asia last time or Europe, it was just America, so maybe these regions are more willing to swap off their decks and play a little bit spicier going into the top 32, but if I'm taking the Americas at face value and saying, okay, players really aren't swapping. Now, for actual predicting winning lineups, this one's hard, and I'll be tweeting about players later, but for Americas, I am expecting Lee Sin, Lysandra, Nasus. For Europe, I would expect the same thing, Lee Sin, Lysandra, Nasus, but I could see... EU's definitely going to be the hardest one to predict because they have such weird stuff come out all the time, and then Asia, I would definitely go with Lysandra, Aesol, and Lee Sin. As I had mentioned, Asia just has phenomenal Targon players in the non-invoke sense, if that makes sense. We're not really seeing Mountain Scryer decks out of Asia. We're seeing the Targon Splash and things like that, and they just play that one phenomenally. So, excited to see what this brings. But that is going to do it for me. Like I said, not too much to go over. Check me on Twitter, casterboulevard, and I will be tweeting out my player predictions later on tonight. So thank you so much for watching. We will be back with our normally scheduled tournament tier list next weekend when the set drops, and I'll try to hard prep you for the opening weekend as the online league series will be returning and going full force, open to every region. Come on and play, show you've got the day one best deck, and yeah, that's going to be it for me. Thank you so much for watching. As always, my name is Boulevard, and good luck in your tournaments.